Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, as now it's time for a brand new unboxing video. And today is a really exciting one, as we're taking a look at the all-new Masterpiece Starscream. Oh wait, no, not that guy, this one! I jest. I've actually been really looking forward to the MPM toy for ages, so I can't wait to check it out today. Now, before we begin, we're actually trying a new thing where I'm going to put 3 quiz questions at the bottom of the screen throughout the review today, like this. Just pop your answers for all 3 in the comments for today's video below, and I'll select one lucky person for a shout out in the next unboxing video. Stick around till the end today for the answers for last time. Right, let's take a look at MPM-10 Starscream. MPM-10 is the latest release in the official movie Masterpiece line and brings to life the unmistakable form of the traitorous Decepticon jet known as Starscream. This highly anticipated new toy looks to be an incredible realization of the character as we know him from the big screen, recreating both modes in intricate detail. Despite having a surprisingly small role in the Transformers movies themselves, Starscream remains a memorable presence, regularly popping up to cause havoc wherever he goes. His characteristics and vocal traits all strongly hint after his original Generation 1 namesake, although his design is entirely new to say the least. It'll be great to see it done justice in MPM form. This isn't the first attempt, mind, although with MPM-1 being a repaint of the original Leader class toy from 10 years ago, it definitely feels like it's time for a new version to shine. Last thing before we begin, today's video comes courtesy of TF Source, so I'll put a link to their site in the video description too. The plan for today is to give you my first impressions before getting a full photo review up on their blog ASAP. And here is Starscream in his box, and it's a fairly large box actually, probably a bit bigger than even I was anticipating. Sizable old thing, and of course the MPM packaging ties in quite nicely with the sort of main Masterpiece line, but it is a little bit different, and that's mainly on account of the fact that you've got obviously Hasbro's logo just here as well as Takara Tomy. It's not just a Takara Tomy line, it's sort of done in conjunction with Hasbro, and I guess that's why there's this little 8+ symbol just here as well, letting you know that there's a bit of an age suggestion there. So if you are under 8, I'm afraid this is not for you. But yeah, looking very exciting. Can't wait to check it out. And of course on the back, we've got plenty of product shots of the toy itself in his robot mode, jet mode, all of the various features. I mean, we're going to be covering off all of that today anyway, so I'm not going to go into detail here, but yeah, it looks good. So let's go ahead and get him out of the box, shall we? Here he is. Now, he looks really nice and all, but one thing I definitely do appreciate about the sort of more traditional Takara Tomy releases is not having all these little ties that you've got to cut to get them out of the box, right? I mean, it's not as bad as twisty ties, but still. Especially as you always miss at least 1 or 2 of the damn things, right? Like, I always find that I go to take the toy out of the packaging and there's always at least one that I haven't taken account of, and lo and behold. Anyway, here you go. This is the complete package. You've got the jet itself in jet mode, and it's going to require a little bit of fiddling to get him looking just as he should be, but we'll do that in just a second. And then you've got 3 weapons, all of which, kind of resemble different bits from the cartoon. You've got this the gun just here, which we'll take a look at coming up. You've got this sort of buzzsaw thing and these sort of like knives, if you will. So we'll get to that in a second. But that's everything in the package here. Fairly light, but it's good. You've also got this folded set of instructions, it comes loose in the box, no baggie, no character card, anything like that. That's fairly typical again of MPM releases, and actually the instructions generally are quite easy to follow, so I'm not too worried about that. Actually, just one thing I do want to note is that they've, maybe this is Hasbro's influence, I don't know, but they've even included just a couple of steps of how to adjust the toy right out the box. And that may seem like a simple thing, but actually, having had a few, well, particularly third-party efforts recently that neglect to include this in their instructions, it can be really invaluable. I'm thinking stuff like, I mean, Fans Toys is a prime example of very often, well, I can think of at least a couple of examples of their toys recently when I've been, it's only later when I come to transform them that I'm like, oh look, there's this piece here or whatever that actually would have been good to know right when you take the thing out of the packaging. So, you know, good on them for including that there, even if it is relatively simple. Anyway, let's go ahead and check out the jet form, and I have just quickly pegged in a couple of bits. There's some, you know, like these pieces on the side, just around the underneath here, a couple of bits that had sort of come untabbed in the packaging, so I've just gone ahead and adjusted that slightly off camera. And then you just want to take these little fins and pull them up like so, and they actually do, oops, clip in. There we go, it's fallen back. And yeah, that's the first thing to do. Then just coming around to the underside, you want to deploy the landing gear. Well, actually the back landing gear like this was already deployed right out of the box. It does show it on the instructions, but this is what it looks like, just to, you know, kind of cover it off. That is what it looks like when it's hidden. And then you can just go ahead and, he says, flip it out. There we go. It's quite hard to do. But yeah, they do come deployed just right out of the box. And then you've got the front landing gear just here, and that just flips out like so. And here is Starscream in his jet form. And I have to say, I think it looks really, really cool. Really dig it. He's really nice color. You know, it's this kind of like tan color that I think looks great. Actually, it's kind of an odd shade. It's not necessarily what I expected. He's definitely very different from the earlier Masterpiece attempt at this character, the MPM-1. But it does look really nice. And then it's got this kind of, I don't know, slightly weathered pattern all over as well. It does look a little bit like, I don't know, like it's rained and it's just kind of drying. We'll take a look at it closer in a minute, but it does look a little bit like that. I'm just finding that some bits like these pieces on the sides are currently, well, sort of refusing to stay tabbed, if anything. I mean, as I said, there were a couple of bits out of the box that were untabbed. This was one of them, and I have pegged it back in several times now, but I think if I'm sure if I just kind of touch it slightly, I mean, there you can see, I know I've pulled on it a little bit, but that's the piece there. It doesn't just kind of want to stay clipped very securely. There you go. You can see I'm just trying to push it back into place. Yeah, it's not going to go. So, you know, maybe there's something that's not quite right that just needs a bit of adjustment right out of the box. We'll have to see. But yeah, first impressions are that it certainly from the top side, it looks really, really nice. I think it's when you get a little bit, you know, a kind of a lower angle that you'll start to see some of the kibble becoming more present. And indeed, you know, the underside is fairly kibble-tastic. To what degree that bothers you, it's up to you. Do you know what I mean? For me personally, I don't know, I'm willing to be quite forgiving about it. I think it's one of those designs that it's just kind of inescapable, really. And certainly jet forms, you know, jet formers in general, I am quite forgiving about. You know, I'm not one of these people that looks to display a jet from the underneath. Do you know what I mean? Whether I'm taking pictures of them or displaying them, whatever else, you know, they do sit on a shelf. So, and you know, car modes typically have a lot of kibble on the underneath, and obviously you don't really see that, but you know, it's got to go somewhere on a jet form, so I am quite forgiving with it. That said, it does protrude a little bit. You can see it around the sides, just here, sticking out the back, so it's definitely going to bother some people, I suspect. I mean, just taking a look at a rear view, you can see, you know, some attempt at making it look kind of real world, I guess, but yeah, there's definitely a bit of junk in the trunk going on back there, right? You can see the hinges from the legs, whatever else. So yeah, there's definitely, you know, as I say, some bits folded up. It's going to offend some people. I'm okay with it, personally. I mean, we have already glimpsed this when we did the landing gear, but why don't we just go ahead and take a much more candid look at what's going on underneath here. And yeah, you know what? It's fairly obviously a pair of robot legs. It's fairly obviously, you know, a lot of bits and bobs and stuff just kind of shoved underneath there. Maybe the most jarring thing is the kind of color differential. You know, you've got this much more tan color here and the gray on the kibble. So, you know, from that perspective, it does stand out slightly. But as I say, there is, in my mind at least, you know, there's a limit to how tidy some of this stuff is ever going to get. Short of making the toy ridiculously complicated or compromising the robot mode. I mean, I guess you could kind of go, you know, if you think back to the, you know, the kind of more traditional Masterpiece line, you could, you know, go the MP3 approach, the original Masterpiece Starscream, the G1 Starscream, and, you know, kind of cover up everything in the jet mode. But then really you've got some serious compromises in the robot mode as well, which a lot of people did not like. So, you know, I kind of feel like they would have to do something similar here in order to get rid of that. So, as I say, for me personally, I think it looks about as tidy as it's ever going to. If it bothers you, there you go. That's what it looks like. coming back round to the top, and really there is a lot to like here. You know, there's a lot of visual interest going on. Really like this orange canopy, really like the colours in general actually, as I already mentioned the tan, but there are some really nice paint applications all over. And yeah, I mean, it's not the most eye-popping thing I've ever seen, but you know, given the kind of typical movie-verse palette that is going on, I think they've done a good job with it. Do you know what I mean? There's a tendency for Decepticons to all look a bit grey in that universe, and this definitely doesn't. So I'm thankful for that. There's that cockpit section, and as you can see, there's a bit of translucent orange plastic, and then a kind of molded interior as well. That looks really, really nice. Definitely stands out a little bit overall on this jet form. Don't believe the hatch opens, can't seem to find a way to get it open anyway, so there you go. Coming a bit further back, here's some of the molded detail that you can see on the top of the body. It's all kind of sculpted really nicely. A few paint applications as well. A couple of tampos that can be seen on this guy as well. They look very nicely applied, very crisp. The paint on the wings is well applied across different sections, you know, as it runs from one panel to the next where they join up. It all looks to be pretty good actually. Then you've got this kind of gold trim just on the kind of rear section there between the fins. That adds a little pop of colour that's really, it really works for me. I like it. So yeah, let's just talk about these sort of painted sections on top, because I mean, that looks like I've just spilt my coffee, you know? I mean, let's be honest. I guess it is what it is. It's the kind of, is it the pattern on the real jet? I don't even know. Someone tell me in the comments. But yeah, that is what it looks like, I think. But yeah, it does. It just reminds me of shampooing the carpet, you know? Maybe when my son's not being careful enough and knocked a drink over or something. I don't know. That's just what it looks like to me. This one in the middle here especially has distinct, as I say, day after the rain vibes, when the puddles are all kind of drying up a little bit. I mean, maybe it's just me and I'm thinking about it too much, but that's just what I see anyway. I'm honestly not looking to knock it though. As I say, realistically, I think it looks really very smart overall. It's a good looking release. As I say, a bit of kibble on the underside, a bit of fun with the paint applications, but you know what? It cleans up really well. I like the jet form quite a bit actually. So, you know, I dig it. I dig it. Let's take a look at some of the weapons and other accessories. Okay, well, first up you have this kind of machine gun piece, which this section actually does rotate, as you can see just there. So that just pegs in on the underneath of the nose cone into that little slot. Goes in quite securely actually. And there you can see it in pride of place. That looks pretty decent. Then you've got this kind of buzzsaw piece, which obviously spins just there. Quite nice silver paint on the saw itself. Otherwise it's just grey plastic. But yeah, that looks decent, and I believe clips onto the jet mode, as we'll see. And then that just pegs into this little hole here. It's kind of angled, but so is the peg on the weapon itself. And just pegs in like so. There it is on the underside of the wing. I guess you'd have to get pretty close to use that in jet mode, but hey ho, it's kind of got a bit of a Bodicea vibe, if anything, right? Then you've got this this piece, which you know, is full of missiles and blades and whatever else, and yeah, it'll be a bit like the buzzsaw, a bit more use in his robot mode, but it does clip onto the jet as well. And of course that pegs in with this same angle piece just here. There you go, just like that. And lo and behold, it actually looks kind of cool underneath the wing. So obviously with the missiles in place and all the other bits. But yeah, I like it. So there you go with all the weapons applied, and he looks pretty mean actually. I like how everything stores away. It's very tidy, very efficient kind of solutions for stuff. It does it does look ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, you know, with this buzzsaw thing especially. But you know what? I dig it. It's like pure 2007 Bayformers mayhem. And I'm here for it. It's cool. Right, well, let's go ahead and do a few comparisons anyway. And first up, we're going to take a look at him with this guy, who is, of course, the original Masterpiece Starscream. This is MP3, already referred to him once in this video. And actually, he was last week's Toy of the Week. So if you haven't checked out that video, then please do. But yeah, this is the original Masterpiece Seeker mold, obviously G1 Seeker mold. And just to kind of see the difference of the two different jet forms here. This guy's, well, they're about the same size. This guy's a little bit longer on account of the longer nose cone on the F-15 Eagle. But yeah, otherwise they shape up pretty nicely. I mean, actually, in terms of real world scale, I guess that's about right. I don't know. I think that's probably what you'd be looking at. Not that these two would ever actually, you know, share the screen or whatever else, but if you did want to have a display of Starscreams, that could be quite a nice prospect. Incidentally, this guy, if you've never seen him, is the same size as MP-11 and indeed the new MP-52 as far as we know. We haven't seen a comparison of that yet, but it looks to be the same or basically the same size as the previous Masterpiece Seeker mold. So just in case you are wondering, this guy's not, you know, much bigger or anything like that. He's the same size. And then let's go ahead and look at this guy's predecessor, another Masterpiece Starscream. This is actually MPM-1. So this is the original movie Masterpiece Starscream. Yeah, it's an interesting one because of course this was actually a repaint of a previous mainline toy, Leader Class Starscream. But actually it looks really good. I absolutely love this version of the toy. Really, really love it. And it's interesting to see the two together, as one thing I will say is that I've always felt that this jet form is extremely tidy, very efficient. You know, overall the toy is very efficient. And really the only thing that lets it down is it's got bizarre hands in robot mode. They don't kind of articulate in the way that you would expect, but we'll do a comparison of that later. But certainly the jet form is really, you know, the one to beat for me. So actually seeing them side by side, it definitely has some advantages over the new MPM. It's certainly a lot tidier on the sides, and arguably the underneath is actually packed away a little bit, you know, a little bit tidier there. I sort of was thinking that I wouldn't be going on about that too much anymore, but actually, you know, got to be honest, as a straight up comparison, it's worth noting. I also do kind of like the body shape on this as well. I've got to be completely honest, I'm not entirely sure which is more accurate to the actual real world jet. So maybe somebody knows, and you know, you can leave a comment, but to my eye, I mean, they both look good. I mean, they both look good. They do different things in terms of decos. This is much more tan, much more grey on this one. Both got the kind of puddle, you know, the kind of puddle look to them. Slightly different in terms of paint applications. Both got orange canopies. Actually, this is a bit more vibrant on this one and maybe looks a bit more striking for it. So yeah, I'm a bit torn. I'm a bit torn. They're both nice. Something about this one does look really good, I have to say. Maybe it's the color just kind of lightens it up a bit. I don't know. Let's take a look at the undersides by comparison as well. So there you go, just flipped them over just so you can see. And again, this is the new MPM-10. This is the MPM-1, so it gives you an idea. And as I said, there is an element to which this is a bit tidier overall, the older version. Having said that, I don't know, this is still pretty good. I think it's just the fact that you've got kibble kind of splaying out to the sides a little bit here that just kind of peeks out from underneath the top. So these bits here, these bits at the sides, whereas actually this is a bit more compacted. And kind of sits in. The wheels on this guy are definitely better versus these, which are just a bit, I don't know, a bit kind of nothing by comparison. Whereas these wheels here, the landing gear, actually look like real landing gear, which is something. So I definitely think this guy has his strengths in terms of how he packs away. Not that this doesn't, but you know, I suppose I'm splitting hairs a little bit in some ways because they're both good, but and you know, and they both have kibble as well. But yeah, it's just interesting to see. Well, now we're going to do another comparison, and here he is with Black Mamba Starscream. And this guy is actually a KO, an oversized KO of the Studio Series, the Hasbro Studio Series design. So rightly or wrongly, there it is, just to see. And actually it's a really nice design, and it's interesting to see, all right, it's a lot bigger than the standard Studio Series mold, but actually the design itself is, again, very efficient with how it transforms and whatever else. So, you know, I really like this toy, so it'll be interesting to see how they compare in robot mode as well. But again, it's pretty tidy on the underneath, you know, versus this guy, which does, again, it's got that kind of kibble creeping out just there at the side. So yeah, definitely something to be said. Very different color scheme again. This is a real gray, and again, obviously with the tan, still with that orange cockpit, although again, this is more vibrant. If anything, this looks closer to MPM-1 in many ways, whereas MPM-10 is a little bit of a departure, it's fair to say. But yeah, interesting to see. And again, you've got a bit of kibble going on the underneath, even on this version as well. I guess, as I say, it's an inevitability of this design, of this Starscream design. There's always going to be some kibble, realistically. So there you go, there's all three of them lined up together. So you've got MPM-10, MPM-10, and this is the Black Mamba version just there. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I think if you didn't sort of say which is which, it would be hard to pick them out of a lineup. I mean, the color is really the kind of biggest variance of these three in many ways, because the actual design, it's good on all three of them, and they all do different things well. I think whichever option you're kind of going for there, they've all got their strengths. I will say that I'm still digging the way that this is so tidy along the sides just here on MPM-1. So I definitely might pick that out a little bit, but it does feel a little bit fatter as well. Whereas MPM-10 is much kind of sleeker, a bit flatter on top. So make of that what you will. I mean, ultimately, I'm going to need to make a decision on which of these three is staying with me, because there's no way that I'm having three of these guys in my house. It's just ridiculous. And I think the big test for me is going to be the robot mode, it's fair to say. So why don't we go ahead to transformation and check it out? Woof, and here he is in his robot mode, and that was certainly more involved than I'd maybe anticipated. I don't know, I guess I had an inkling that it was going to be a little bit fiddly, but I definitely didn't think it would be as involved as that. I mean, it's probably one of those that I just need to do back and forth a couple of times to get used to it. And to be fair, I'm probably basing that assumption on the previous MPM toy, which obviously wasn't initially designed as a masterpiece technically, and indeed the Osco that we looked at as well, which of course was a Studio Series design. And this is definitely a level up in terms of kind of intricate engineering and complexity generally. There are a couple of really clever bits that I do like, I really like a lot, particularly the way the chest comes together and the way that, oh, hang on, we'll talk about stability in a minute, but yeah, he's not the most stable. Yeah, particularly the way this chest section comes together here looks beautiful and actually is quite clever as well. A lot of pieces that unpeg and come apart and what have you here that actually on the previous versions of this character that I've owned, that's just one piece. That's just the kind of nose cone section folded down. And actually here there's a lot more going on. And a lot of moving parts, a lot. Like the fingers, the wings, all through the legs, even kind of, can you call them the shoulders, these bits here, that, there's movement there. So yeah, I do think there's a couple of bits like the pieces on the chest, some bits on the back that don't maybe tab as securely as I would like personally. But it's a good transformation. It's very clever. So yeah, and the robot mode looks excellent. Really like it. I mean, look, love it or hate it, there's no denying that is Starscream from the 2007 movie. I mean, it just is a pretty much a dead ringer for him in many ways. It's got the level of detail going on that you would expect. The sculpt looks awesome. The proportions, actually, I know it's a kind of a weird thing to talk about with this design, but I mean, it's so super quirky. This is definitely the most spot-on version to the character anyway that I've seen so far. And it just looks terrific, all things considered. It's got to be said that the finish on this guy is pretty superb as well. Very eye-catching. I mean, considering that it's a grey robot, you know, and a bit of a mangled one at that, he does catch the eye really nicely. Just lots of, like, you know, the orange, the gold trims, the paint applications all around, you know, the wires in the arms. There's a lot happening visually. You know, there's little touches, but it really kind of draws the eye quite a bit. And actually, he looks pretty spectacular, I think. Face sculpt certainly leans into the character design quite heavily. Some people hate this, some people love it. I actually really dig it. I think it's cool. And yeah, definitely some nice paint applications going on there. You can't call it handsome by any means, but it certainly looks like the character. I think they've done a really great job with the sculpt. And he's got, you can't really see them just here, but he does have some red eyes, but they're very obscured just underneath these little slits there as well. But it looks good. Of course, should you really want, then he can actually move his jaw. I don't know if that's talking or spitting maybe, as he does in one of the films. Lovely. But there you go. Coming further down to the chest, I just absolutely love the detail going on here. I think the colours work excellently. The moulding is really on point. There's just a lot to look at. Very visually busy, but it really works to my eye. It's kind of, you know, what makes this mould. It's particularly true of this top section just here, which is the very top, just above the cockpit section on his chest, and beautifully sculpted there. Really nice. And that's a level of detail that I haven't seen on the other two versions of this character that I have. Just coming back up slightly to the top of this is just the shoulder section just here. And you can see there is a slight colour differential between some of the kind of unpainted grey plastic and the kind of tan, which is sitting on the top of the jet. It doesn't bother me, I must admit, but I don't know, maybe some people would just prefer kind of one uniform colour. And just coming back down to the kind of arms and shoulders again, really love this kind of worn metallic look in here. This is actually die-cast, this piece. As you can probably see, it does look like metal, and indeed it is. And then these pieces just here with the painted wires, I think look superb. I will say actually not quite as detailed on that section as MPM-1. We'll do a comparison in a little bit, but still it looks excellent. Then of course there's the hands, which are super detailed. We'll take a look at articulation in just a minute, but man, these things are menacing. And then coming down to the legs, of course you've got this kind of bird-esque look, which is so familiar with the character design. Works really well. Like how the joints are done, there's a couple of bits where they kind of lock slightly to give you a bit of stability. That said, there is quite a lot of movement in the joints, so we'll look at that properly in just a minute, but I am detecting that he's maybe not the most stable, as I've already indicated. And the feet are die-cast just here, so that's a nice touch as well. And then coming around to his back, you've got these two kind of rockets on his back just there, which are actually movable. They move around quite a bit actually. They're on two different kind of hinge joints, so you can pretty much position those however you want. And they look really good, kind of painted in gold. They're very nice indeed. Oh, and before I forget, these wings are a bit of a revelation, because actually they move quite freely back and forth as well. That's by design. That's not that's not just something not tabbed in correctly. That's actually to give you a bit more posability as well, which is cool. So yeah, looks wise, he really can't be beat. Super impressed in that regard. I think where he's going to be a bit of a letdown, certainly in terms of first impressions, is the old stability, because if I just give him a little nudge, yeah, he just goes straight over. And that is a bit of a shame, because actually when you do get him in a pose, he does hold quite stably, just don't knock him, that's all. And then you should be fine. And he's certainly not difficult to pose. I mean, there are tons of joints on this thing, so let's take a look. So head can swivel side to side, it's quite stiff, but it does go, and looks up as well. Shoulders here have actually got a little hinge in them, so he can kind of flex his abs or something, however you want to describe it. I think they've taken a bit of a leaf out from the sort of main masterpiece line there with that one a little bit. Shoulders are on a double hinge here, so it can go up and down, some nice ratchets, and out to the side quite a bit as well. And then at the elbow, you've of course got quite a decent bend. Well, maybe not as much as I would have liked actually. It just goes to 90 degrees. I probably could have done with a bit more there. There's no sort of bicep swivel to speak of as well. So let's talk about these hands, because there's quite a lot going on. Firstly, of course, he has wrist swivel and a bit of back and forth as well. Then you actually have articulation in the hand itself, just like that. It actually sort of splits a little bit, which is weird, but there you go. He has 2 thumbs, because of course, they flay out to the sides like so, and then there is actually articulation that way also. And then he's got 3 fingers, main fingers, and they're all articulated just at the knuckle. I initially thought they would bend here at the kind of this hinge as well, but they don't. They just go at this point. So, but they are all individually articulated, so quite a bit. Nothing like a waist swivel on this guy, but you've got some really decent ratchets at the hips, as you can hear. They're actually very strong. Looking at the rest of the legs, of course, there's knee articulation, which will go back and forth. I could actually do with a little bit more stability in there. I don't know if you can see, I'm not moving the ratchet, but there is actually just a bit of give there. And I feel like that needs to be more solid as well, because although the ratchet is nice, there's just a bit too much give in there for, could do with a bit more stability. Coming down to this joint, that's actually really tight and no give in that one whatsoever, so that's good. So yeah, all things considered, he's got all of the articulation kind of necessary to look really cool, and he can pose really well. As I say, it's just unfortunate that there's a little bit of instability in the feet there, so he does feel like he could take a topple. I mean, actually, as I said earlier, when you get him into a decent pose, if you're careful with it, he is quite stable. I mean, evidence is right there. But at the same time, I've just found that, yeah, there's just too much give in those feet for my liking. I'm also slightly put off by the elbows only going to 90 degrees, which is a real shame because it just limits the posing somewhat. I mean, this is such a weird and, well, just weird design anyway, really, that, you kind of need all the posability that you can, all the articulation that you can get in order to kind of make it work. So I'm really surprised that they didn't account for that in those elbows. It's a bit of a shame. I don't know, maybe I'm just expecting too much from my MPM Starscreams, but as I said, it was a turn off for me with MPM-1 that the hands were kind of weird and would, the way that they moved, which we'll take a look at in a second. And here, actually, as I say, already with the 90-degree bend at the elbows, but actually I'm just finding now the lack of bicep swivel as well is just killing it slightly for me, because you can't fold the arms inwards at all. They're kind of stuck in that position. And I'm just really surprised by it. He looks great. I mean, don't get me wrong, he looks superb. And I'm wondering if maybe I've just missed something, but it just doesn't quite articulate in the arms in the way that I want him to. Right, well, let's look at some accessories anyway. And of course, with these 2 pieces, these actually attach over his hands, or over his arms certainly. So let's take a look at how that works. Right, well, the first thing you want to do is get these hands out the way. So firstly, you just kind of fold the thumbs back like so, wrap the rest of the hand round, and then you want to make sure that they just tuck away like so on the back of the arm. And then you want to take your weapons piece, and there's a tab just here which is going to go on the end of the arm, and another tab here which goes into this piece here. So it's actually quite straightforward. Just pegs in like so and close it up, and that's actually quite secure. And then of course you just do the same over this side with the buzzsaw part. There you go. Yeah, and they both work really well. I mean, that's a very simplistic feature, but, all the better for it, really. They look great as well in place. So some nice weapons features. Just a shame that there isn't kind of a bit more articulation there, as I mentioned, in order to kind of, pose them a bit better, but they look good all the same. Or, if you prefer, then you can put his machine gun weapon on his wrist instead, like so. And yeah, he poses fairly nicely with that in place. He looks quite cool trying to shoot it. I mean, it's a small little thing, and to be fair, it could probably do with some paint applications or something to really make it stand out, because it kind of gets lost a bit in the kind of sea of grey, but still, it looks fine. And then just coming around to the back, should you prefer, you can actually store all 3 weapons kind of on his backpack. So the chainsaw, the sort of missile thing, and the, is it a Gatling gun, or I don't know, whatever it is, machine gun. It just goes in the middle just there. So, I mean, that's kind of a nice handy solution as well, to not lose anything. Right, well, let's go ahead and do some comparisons of this guy anyway. And firstly, here he is with MPM-3 Bumblebee, which of course was the kind of I suppose the first in the sort of more modern iteration of the movie masterpiece line. You know, after you had MPM-10 Starscream and MPM-2 Bumblebee, both of which were repaints of previous mainline figures, this was the first that was designed specifically for the movie masterpiece line. And interesting to see as Starscream looks really huge by comparison. It's a lot of fun. Sadly, I had a few QC errors with this guy at the time, and although things have moved on quite a bit, you know, there's still elements that are not perfect. So it's kind of a running trend, unfortunately, in this line. It's a shame because the designs are always fantastic. The execution just leaves a little bit to be desired, sadly. Next, we'll take a look at him with another Autobot. We'll do the Autobots first. Here's Masterpiece Jazz. Maybe not the Masterpiece Jazz that lots of people would like to see happen, but there it is all the same. And yeah, they look really cool together. Again, just love how big Starscream looks. And you know, again, actually, we'll look at him versus the other examples of this character in just a minute, but I do like the kind of proportions that are going on here as well. And I think this really shows it off nicely. He looks hulking and big and exactly like you'd want from the 2007 movie. Next, we're going to take a look at Masterpiece Ironhide for comparison. And well, I say that actually, it's Masterpiece Ironhide plus DNA Design upgrade kit, as you know, unfortunately my copy, like pretty much every copy of this toy, was, you know, riddled with little QC errors. As I mentioned, it's a common theme in this line, sadly. It's a shame because the designs are stunning, really lovely. I mean, it's just such a great looking toy, but just an absolute bummer to transform. One of my least favorite toys to transform ever, I think, sadly, but it does look lovely in robot mode all the same. Next, we'll finish off with the Autobots, and here is Masterpiece Optimus Prime, you know, who actually height-wise is not too far off Starscream. Obviously, Starscream's got a bit of bulk on him overall, considerably bigger, all things considered, but you know, height-wise, they shape up really quite nicely. Of course, you can extend the legs a bit further on Starscream as well, but you know, that's with that kind of bird-like stance that he's got going on. That's his sort of true height, if you will. Right, let's do some Decepticons. And firstly, well, we'll start with the smallest anyway. This is Barricade, MPM Barricade, who, for my money, is one of the best of the line. Actually, definitely one of the best of the line. I love this toy, really love it. He's solid, he's well built, transformation's, you know, pretty easy. Design is great in both modes, and no QC errors. So he's definitely the best in that regard, you know, in terms of production value anyway. And they look very, very cool together, it's fair to say. Okay, we're going to bring in some unofficial bots now. And firstly, here's a third-party effort, not a KO, as a lot of people think that this is a KO, but it's not. It's third-party, technically, because it's an original design. This is TF Dream Factory Bone Crusher, and I just think is, you know, really spectacular rendition of that character. Looks great. And again, you can see how they scale up size-wise. They look pretty good together. Here's another unofficial toy. This one is a KO. This is Black Mamba Brawl. Had to think there for a second. And again, it's an oversized KO of the Studio Series Brawl. So a design that may be familiar to some of you if you collect the Studio Series line. And again, I think they look very, very cool together. Let's hope that Takara Tomy give us an official Masterpiece Brawl at some point, but failing that, here you go. And then one I'd definitely love to see done in official style, but failing that, here is Wei Jiang Brawl. Brawl? What am I on about? Blackout, sorry, beg your pardon. Yeah, there you go. The fantastic design, this one. Really, really lovely. Again, it's another Studio Series original, so it's a Hasbro design, but just, you know, enlarged and whatever else. But yeah, they look very, very cool together. Love this toy and love how that looks. I think that's pretty spectacular. And then, of course, it's time to take a look at him with MPM Megatron. There we go. And again, really handsome toy. I love the way it looks. Just so much nice detail, everything else. So many good things to say about the visual appeal of this toy. Just let down by a couple of QC errors on mine. So yeah, it's as I say, a recurring theme. But needless to say, they look spectacular together. There's a lot to like here with this comparison. Certainly display-wise, just fantastic. Really awesome job. Gotta love it, haven't you? I mean, that's really something. And then for a bit of fun, let's look at him with another Starscream. Maybe not the Starscream you were expecting, but here is MP-11, Masterpiece Starscream. And you know what? I'm so ready for the new MP-52. I can't even tell you. Like, I've mentioned it a few times, but when they first said, "Oh yeah, we're going to do another Sixo mold," I was kind of like, "Really? Okay." But actually now, I mean, especially looking at this guy, I'm just so ready for it. Honestly, it just feels very outdated. But it's fun to see this comparison nonetheless. Right, well, let's bring in some other Starscreams now. And firstly, this is the Black Mamba version that we saw in jet form earlier, just so you can see a straight up comparison of these two. And it's interesting because, well, technically, they're both Hasbro designs. I mean, they are. I mean, this is the Studio Series version, just hugely oversized. And you can see how they shape up. I have to say, it's a really interesting one for me, as build-wise, stability-wise, this guy really does feel very good. Do you know what I mean? He poses well. He's very stable. I mean, the joints are exceptionally tight. You know, it's definitely got that going for it. And things like the arms, you know, it has the bicep swivel that I think this guy's lacking. You know, and all right, the arms only go to 90, but there's another joint just here as well, so you can really get a lot more posability out of those arms, which is exactly what I was looking for. And you know, initially the way that the hands move as well, that was what solved that problem for me on the original MPM-1. So it's interesting to see that again there's more articulation in these arms, which is exactly what I was after initially. That said, I do think that the overall look and design of the MPM-10 is better. By some mile, actually. Not like, I mean, it's not like night and day. It's, you know, but that said, there's, I don't know, there's some nice paint applications and stuff on this guy, you know, silver paint, little purple touches, flourishes, whatever, that does look really nice and compares nicely to the bare plastic on this guy. But overall, just the shape, the proportions, it's movie Starscream. You know, that's the thing that you're getting with this guy, is that it looks exactly as it's supposed to, versus the you know, the big screen films. So yes, this is a nice imitation, and arguably, you know, the joints are better. Well, they are better, and it's got more articulation. But in terms of the look, this guy takes it for me overall. So it's a tough one. I think the thing to be done, of course, is to try and tighten up some of those leg joints just to increase the stability a bit. I'll just, you know, maybe have to live with the arms as they are. It's just kind of one of those things, those quirks, but I'm sure I'll get used to it. But I do like the way that he stands and looks. It's just, you know, really impressive. And finally, of course, it's worth seeing him with the original movie masterpiece Starscream, MPM-1. So this is MPM-1 on the right and MPM-10 on the left. Gosh, I'm going to be doing a lot of Starscream comparisons coming up, right? Like there's these guys, there's the MP-52, it's all happening, Starscream everywhere. And it's really interesting to see is actually, you know what, I still love this toy. I think it's great. And actually, in terms of, again, paint applications, I think it's beautiful. You know, some nice little blue accents in here up the top. The wires in the arms and the detail in the arms is brilliant. Looks really, really cool. I like the color, generally speaking. But again, it's a similar story to what we just said, in that the proportions and the build and the, well, the kind of overall look are definitely handed to this guy for me. So many little details, so many ways that he looks that I think just work better overall. Even though this is still a great design. And of course, the big thing for me, I know I've alluded to it a couple of times in this video, is these arms on this guy, which sadly, I think it's really down to the lack of wrist swivel. So the wrists don't turn. So you're kind of left with them always looking a bit awkward. I don't know what they were thinking with that really, because it's just such a weird design choice. You're kind of always left with these palms, you know, upturned like that, which just looks a bit odd. But there you go, that's MPM-1 and MPM-10. I have to say, seeing them all side by side, I am still peeved about the joints and stuff, but MPM-10, I think, is definitely taking it for me overall. I mean, yeah, he's not the cheapest thing ever, and, you know, there are some faults with it, but I just think he looks fabulous. I'm really, really into it, and I think, you know, it's not a slam dunk over the other two by any means, and certainly, you know, whichever one you go for, there's good and bad. But I do think overall it's, you know, he's winning me over, I've got to say. He's definitely winning me over. I'm really looking forward to taking some photos of him properly. So final thoughts on this guy are that he's very, very imperfect, but overall I really, really like him. I think, you know, the design is really something. It's there's no two ways around it really. He's great to look at, and he does pose nicely, you know. Yeah, there are a couple of quirks. I do slightly bemoan the lack of bicep swivel. I think, you know, overall that's my number one kind of killing it factor. Do you know what I mean? It would just pose so much nicer if you could just swing the arms in a little bit. So that's definitely a thing. And then number two is the lack of stability in the feet, which I'm sure can be fixed. I mean, I'm relatively certain if I give that a go with a bit of furniture polish, it's not going to be too much of an issue. Shame though that the official MPM line can't get that into gear. I mean, come on, you know, movie fans are ready. Just put out decent quality toys already, please. Do you know what I mean? They're great designs. Love them. Absolutely love every design that we've had so far in the official Movie Masterpiece line. Just iffy QC all across the board, which is a shame. And actually this guy is better than most, I will say. If it wasn't for the slightly loose ankles, I wouldn't be saying that at all in regards to this guy, because otherwise he feels pretty spectacular. And I like the finish on it as well. So, you know, and it just looks terrific. I know I keep saying it, but he looks terrific. So all in all, everything considered, you know what, for me, it's a toot. So that's MPM-10. I'll put a link to TF Source's listing for this guy in the video description, and I'll be aiming to get the full photo review up on their blog ASAP. Don't forget to put your answers for today's quiz questions in the comments below, and here are the correct answers for the last video. Thanks to everyone for playing along. Now, a big thank you for watching, and don't forget to drop me a like if you enjoyed today's video, and a quick final shout out to everyone who supports me on Patreon as well. Otherwise, that's it from me, so enjoy the rest of your day. TTFN.